What would you do if a wild ocelot cat shows up at your door one freezing night, carrying her injured baby and staring at you for help? Before we start this incredible story of trust and survival, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more amazing tales.
In the dense foothills of the Sierra Madre Mountains, where the forest meets the sky, lived Daniel, a quiet man who had left the chaos of the city years ago. His small cabin sat at the edge of the jungle, surrounded by tall pines and flowering vines. At 35, Daniel had traded his job as an engineer for a simpler life photographing rare wildlife. Every morning, Daniel made coffee and sat on his porch with his camera, waiting for the forest to wake. He'd captured toucans on bright branches, a jaguar's shadow in the distance, and once even a troop of monkeys swinging across the canopy. But nothing prepared him for the morning he saw the ocelot. It was late autumn, and the nights had grown colder. Mist hung low, and the air smelled of wet leaves. That morning, as Daniel raised his mug, a pair of golden eyes glowed from the tree. Line, a wild ocelot, her coat dappled with spots, blending perfectly into the underbrush, crouched at the clearing. Daniel froze, his breath caught. Ocelots were shy creatures, rarely seen up close. Slowly, he reached for his camera, snapping her as she padded silently through the ferns before vanishing into the forest. Over the next few weeks, the ocelot began to appear more often, always at dawn, always keeping her distance. Daniel noticed she looked lean, maybe too lean for the season. Against his better judgment, he left out a little raw chicken one evening at the edge of the clearing. At first, the food disappeared overnight. But after several nights, Daniel finally saw her slink out of the shadows, sniff the meat, and carry it back into the dark. "This is just to help you through winter," he whispered once, knowing she couldn't understand. As weeks passed, the ocelot grew bolder, staying longer in the clearing, her amber eyes fixed on him. Still, she never came close. Daniel never named her, never tried to touch her, just quietly helped. When winter hit hard, snow fell thick over the mountains. One night, a brutal storm howled outside, rattling the shutters and burying the trails. In white, Daniel worried about the ocelot but stayed inside, feeding the wood stove to keep warm. Then, just after sunrise the next morning, he heard something strange. A faint scratching at the door. Daniel peered through the frosted glass, and his heart leapt. There she was, the ocelot, but this time she stood on his porch, and at her feet lay a small, trembling ball of fur, a kitten, barely moving, its tiny body covered in snow, one hind leg twisted unnaturally. The mother's eyes locked on his, fierce yet pleading, as if saying, "Help him." Daniel swallowed hard, knowing this went against everything he understood about wild animals. Still, he opened the door a crack. The ocelot backed up a few feet, her ears flat but her gaze fixed on him. "All right," he murmured, "I'll help him." Carefully, he wrapped the tiny kitten in a towel, feeling how light and cold it was. The mother let out a low, heartbreaking growl but didn't stop him. "I'll take care of him," Daniel promised softly, closing the door as snow swirled outside. He called the nearest wildlife rescue center 3 hours away. The roads were icy and dangerous, but the vet on the phone urged him to hurry. With the kitten nestled in a box beside him, Daniel drove slowly through snow and wind. "Stay with me, little guy," he whispered again and again. At the center, they worked quickly, setting the kitten's broken leg, warming his tiny body, and starting fluids. "He's weak," the vet said, "but he has a chance." Daniel's relief was so sharp it hurt. Over the following weeks, Daniel visited often. The kitten, who he started calling Leo in his head, began to heal. But the staff explained that Leo's time around humans made it unlikely he could return to the wild. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, the mother ocelot kept returning. Daniel would sometimes see her at dusk, sitting just beyond the trees, watching the porch where her son had lain that snowy morning. Finally, the center told Daniel Leo couldn't be released, but they offered him the chance to keep Leo in a specially built enclosure on his property if he completed the training and built the right habitat. He agreed without hesitation. Weeks later, Leo came home, strong, playful, with just a slight limp. Daniel watched with tears in his eyes as Leo explored his new sanctuary, climbing, hiding, and finally curling up under a log. That evening, as the sun set, the mother appeared again. She approached the enclosure slowly, and for a long time, she and Leo just stared at each other through the mesh. Two wild hearts, divided but connected. And Daniel stood there too, knowing he had kept his promise. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, a trust born in the snow between a man, a mother, and her son.